Hey friends, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Farkan, product designer, work in London. In this video, I want to reflect and talk openly after completing my first 12 months at Meta as a product designer in London. Before I joined, I recorded a video setting my expectations of why I'm looking to join and what I'm really looking to learn. And now I feel like it'll be a great chance to reflect on this and see, has it really met my expectations? What things have exceeded my expectations, and maybe what things have fallen short so far as well, and what I'm looking to gain next. If you're new here, be sure to subscribe for future design related videos, and let's get started. So at the time of recording this video is Saturday the 19th of November 2022, and I started my journey at Meta on the 22nd of November in 2021, and now it's basically been a year, and there's a lot to really reflect on and to really just share openly about. And it's nice just to document my thoughts and journeys to see maybe in a year's time how things have changed again. So without further ado, I feel like there's quite a few topics to get started. So over 12 months at Meta, what are some of the things I've learned about myself as a person, exposing myself to this new opportunity and exposing myself to different situations? I feel like the first thing is really learning how to deal with uncertainty and being content with when it came to redundancies and knowing my self-worth. I feel like that was a really important lesson when there's so much ambiguity was what was going to happen, is that realizing being content with whatever happened. I reacted like pretty well during that time, and I feel like it's something definitely can take going forward, is that when there's things outside of your control, like being content and knowing your self-worth is really important with whatever decision was going to be made. I feel like another learning is a lot of feedback I get as being a people's person, and like caring personally about XFM partners and investing more in that relationship is important to myself as a person. And I feel like it helps a lot during the workday, and it can really go a long way. I never really considered myself as the type of person before I joined like Meta, but I never realized like how easy it is really to make relationships with like new people and going for those lunches and coffees, and like it can go a long way, and I don't mind doing this. And I think another thing I learned is meetings take a lot of my energy, and I love an async working style, especially with this hybrid model. But I need to realize at the same time that async sometimes can slow down things, but I prefer writing texts, writing posts, writing chat messages, or using videos to communicate things is something I love a lot. But then not everyone prefers this style of communication, and it's something in 2023 I should like review a bit as well. And the last thing I'd say is learning to not get too emotionally attached to projects. Like sometimes you can cross the line when it comes to the investment into a working project, and you don't need to get so emotionally attached. You're going to get paid regardless of what happens. If the scope creep changes in a project, at the end of the day it's a job, and you don't need to invest too much into this. And like when you care personally about things, it can get frustrating when things change constantly, but we need to realize like don't cross that line and get too emotionally invested in things. And like there's other things out of work, like for example content creation or like going out with friends, and I feel like when you put and prioritize yourself first over projects, that was a really important reflection. And I need to realize like getting better at that as well, is look, I'm just always going to put things outside of work first, and I'm not going to try and cross that line. So when it comes to self-worth and self-confidence, I would say it definitely isn't a linear path. And like the first 6 months, it really is about you trying to settle down and really understand how things work here. And for me, it didn't help, I suppose, something like fully remote during the pandemic, where you didn't really have the opportunity to like meet people. So that made it a tiny bit harder, but you get through that 6-month period, and it is sometimes there are days that are a bit more rocky than others. But after this, like honestly, like at the end of 12 months, like confidence is honestly on another level as a designer. And just because you've like led certain projects, you've shipped big projects inside these like big tech companies, and you've managed to lead things or teach other people things, and you're like, wow, like I've managed to do this inside like this company, like I actually feel like I'm actually pretty decent at this now. And I feel like naturally, I feel like when I started I was 24, now 25, and being a bit younger, that also I suppose you're like, oh wow, a lot of people here have a lot of experience on me, or they're a lot older than me. But naturally it's just about how good you are as a designer, and everyone does respect your opinion, and you can start to flourish when you show people your work and share your opinions, and like naturally people do start to trust you. And honestly, my self-worth and confidence is like boosted tremendously since I've joined. But not to say the first 6 months, like yeah, it is a bit more rocky, but I think like thinking holistically, things have improved a lot. I think an interesting reflection, I think, which is pretty cool, is just how global and diverse the workforce is. And what I mean by this is when you go inside the office, like we're talking about diversity from people from all across the world. So like being from London, from the UK, the majority of the people aren't actually in the same boat as me, and there's so many different cultures and so many different perspectives in the office. You have people from all over the world, and I think that's what makes it such a unique environment. And when you turn up to the office, I think it just means that you hear totally different stories from people. Like people think with different perspectives to myself, like being brought up with different stories or like different ways of doing things. And I think it just makes your day-to-day like project teams a bit more interesting as well. And I feel like as the months go on, it's just something that you appreciate more, to be honest. Like from a previous company, like a lot of people, it was maybe diverse in the sense that it was more of a global workforce, but not as many people were actually on sponsored visas, and everyone was basically from the UK. I think one of my favorite reflections, and hopefully something that I'm going to continue to take on, is just how amazing the mentoring network here is internally at Meta, and as well as the advice that you can get from people. For example, I wanted to get help on visual design, and the caliber of the wealth of experience and the projects people have been exposed on is insane. For example, I had a mentor who previously worked at Apple on like some really cool stuff, and like internally at Meta he's worked on like Messenger and worked on some really cool features, and was able to teach me so many cool little visual design prompts, and like really help boost my confidence in my first few months here as well, and just teach me a few little hints and tips. For example, I wanted a mentor to help me improve my product thinking skills and create really compelling visions. And my current mentor, she's like worked at really cool big tech companies like Google, and some of the vision projects she's worked on are so amazing, and the tips that they bring to the table are just like insane. And this is something I'm so grateful for. And I've had another mentor, for example, help me out with some interaction design to create some compelling prototypes. There's just a wealth of experience here, and leveraging this is probably one of my favorite things coming here. And the conversations that you have outside your mentors, like if you just want to talk to someone about something, for example, someone might be really good at like user research, or for example they might be really interested in like behavioral psychology and they've done maybe a PhD in this, and you can just talk to them about this, and like the wealth of knowledge they've got is amazing. It's something I want to continue like plugging into and learn a lot from, and it's truly amazing. So I'm just going to give my reactions and reflections of, does things really stand up or stand true to what I was actively looking for in this role a year later? And luckily I've like made some chapters in this video so we can go through why I chose like big tech and the skills I want to improve on. I feel like to start with, let's go on why I chose big tech and like see if the sentiment is still the same. Forward is that I really want to go to a big tech company, mainly because I want to be surrounded by a big design team with lots of seniors to basically elevate and take my learning to the next level, especially on terms of like visual design and product thinking and scaling things. And I feel like big tech companies are a great place to do this, as well as like the impact that you can have is something I was looking for. Is like there's a lot of experience like mentors that I've had, but the direct experience of my direct team, I suppose, isn't as big as I thought it would actively be, I suppose. But then there's other teams where there's been people as designers in there for years, you know. And like I said, I've had like really experienced mentors as well with a vast array of experiences, and like I've had opportunities to improve my visual design. But what I'd say on this is that there's such a big design system internally, and I suppose you don't work on as ambiguous like visual or compelling projects when you're constrained by the design system. And then when it comes to impact, being on workplace, I suppose it's a bit more limited compared to if you was on a consumer-facing product like IG or WhatsApp or Messenger. Maybe that's something I still can actively like pursue as well if I'm looking to like make that bigger impact. Having the impact on working on products where billions of people use them, and I feel like that's a unique kind of environment to be in itself. And the interview processes are very vigorous in these big tech companies, and I feel like the expectation of the designers you're going to be working there should be like pretty cool as well. Like there should be a pretty high caliber of designers to learn off of. So the main like goal for me is Yeah, I'd say generally the caliber of an average designer here is high. But not to say everyone here is like crazy, like good, you know. And I feel like there's very experienced people in other companies, like in my previous company, you can learn loads off of it as well. But I think there are like it's more common to find like that person with insane experience, or like they've just done some like really amazing work. It's just a bit more common here to find that, and it's down to you as an individual to go to that person really if you want to learn from them as well. But not to say that the caliber here is low. I'm just saying it's the average, I suppose, designer to like pass these like interviews does make the average designer here like pretty high. To basically be able to learn off of like senior designers, as well as like making an impact, and trying to. So I mentioned that I really got on with the manager when I had the chance to interview them, and what are my expectations? If my manager wants to act as a coach, I need to actually have an understanding of what I want to be coached on. And it's something I mentioned earlier, is that I really want to improve on my visual design, as well as have a chance of working on more complex flows and interactions, and increase my product thinking and have the. So here, the skills I want to improve on, I said actively before I joined, I want to improve on visual design and product thinking skills. So visual design, product thinking skills, and working on complex interactions. And I'd say visual design, I feel like I never really had the opportunity to design for desktop previously, so I've definitely improved in that department, which has been awesome. And I feel like I've had a mentor to help me improve on a few bits like that. So I wouldn't say I've got substantially better, but I've definitely improved. But product thinking, yeah. In workplace, there's a lot of vision pieces of work that you get to work on. So I've really had the opportunity to improve massively on my product thinking skills, working on really ambiguous, just vision pieces of like, what can like the future of this org look like in a few years. Like that type of ambiguity is really cool. And then more smaller scaled on my direct product team at the start of the half, like what could the vision look like when we redesign permissions, or I've done another piece around accessibility. So I've done like quite a few pieces of vision pieces of work, improving my product thinking skills, and that had the opportunity to perk up my visual designs. And in terms of complex interactions and pieces, there's plenty of permission pieces of work where there's a lot of complex flows that I've had the opportunity to boost my thinking on that as well. But I still feel like there's more to come really if I was on a consumer facing team, where what I mean by this is that there's probably even more complex flows to come there, or like I suppose there's when it comes to like maybe consumer face, for example, I really like content creation, or maybe what does the future of a creator space look like, or something like this is something I might want to pursue, as well as like consumer fitness, and I suppose just visually maybe I feel like it might have to look a bit higher caliber maybe, but I don't think that's necessarily true. It's down to the org as well that you're on. And the last bit,
opportunity to be able to scale products to release to millions of people, if not billions of people. So having that more complex problem solving and improving my visual design, product thinking.
What I'd say is you'll be surprised. I suppose I've been on quite a few projects that just haven't really made it over the line. There's been quite a lot of projects. So in terms of like shipping things, you definitely come here looking to ship things and make an impact, but like I've made like impact in different ways of like this is what the future of a project could be looking like in terms of these vision pieces, but in terms of like tangible, like go on the app, this is what I've shipped, it hasn't like been as big, I suppose, and there's a lot more to come from that.
That's what my expectation is going into Meta, as well as obviously it's such a good brand name on your CV as well, because there is in the industry, if you've got a big tech on your CV, people do look up to your views, and
I'd definitely say this is true. The amount of LinkedIn requests that you get is very high, and personally I don't really encourage or think this behavior is right, to be honest. There's like plenty of other good designs at other companies as well, and you'll be surprised, like I mentioned, I said the average caliber here is very like is very good as well, but it's not to say everyone here is amazing as well. But there's a lot more to come from this. I think the last thing, my thinking of ethics, I think this definitely stands true. The TLDR on this is that I said, look, we work in a capitalist, like, Western society where there's, at the end of the day, profits like put first on a lot of these things. I think Elon Musk, I suppose, and Twitter, their brand, I suppose, is really taking over headlines right now, and the brand of like Meta hasn't looked as bad since I've made this video.
I want to do is have a lot of impact and be able to release something that people publicly will recognize and actually use. That'll be something really big, and I think a lot of it's going to be self-confidence as a designer and really building that and building my name as a designer in the industry as a whole, and coming up with some like innovative stuff, as well as just basically building up that massive self-confidence and being able to lead things from like start to end.
Wow. I'd definitely say self-confidence has gone up a lot on this. So that's definitely true. Like, wow, the self-confidence tournament has gone a lot. Leading stuff, the expectation here at the level I'm at is you lead stuff. So yeah, being able to lead a lot of stuff. But when it came to working on something, shipping a product that loads of people use and recognize, I think the team that I'm directly on right now probably won't allow me to unlock that opportunity. And I think it's a reflection right now of like, look, this is how I still want to do, and let's see if I can find this in the future. But I think that's one thing I've got left to do, really, is all the other things I've definitely feel like I've ticked off, like, but the consumer facing, wow, loads of people using that feature
as a designer. But the main thing I want to do is have a lot of impact and be able to release something that people publicly will recognize and actually use.
I think the analogy, it would be nice to go on The Verge one day and see that Instagram shipped this feature, or Messenger shipped this, or WhatsApp shipped this, and I'll be like, wow, that's something I had done, you know. And I think that's definitely what I want to actively look for next. But I'm very just shocked, really, about how being intentional before I came and reflected 12 months, it's kind of stood true. I feel like it's really important to do stuff like this, to be intentional when you come to like pursue certain experiences. And I can still see here that there's one thing I want to get next year, and we'll see if it is possible. And like it's fine for your expectations to change, because like I said, I'm really interested in the future of work and what that ambiguous space of what that could look like. That could be exciting as well. But the consumer facing thing, like, it might be a compromise instead of a future, but let's see. But hopefully that was useful. So what am I actively looking for next now? I've spent the first 12 months at Meta. I think now I feel very settled. I feel like I've had the chance to work on a pretty cool project at Knowledge Library and Workplace. I feel like all my previous projects were all like consumer facing apps, and I definitely want to have an opportunity to do this again. I really just love consumer facing apps, mainly because you can see actively people using the stuff that you create, and I feel like it just gives me this extra bit of joy. And I feel like one thing I really do love is content creation, and maybe I want to do something around helping creators as well, and I feel like that's something I want to actively pursue. However, there's a lot of like future of work projects that I'm able to get exposed to as well, and that, I have to say, is very exciting as well as I do have this like itch for consumer facing stuff. But the future of work prospects are looking, right now it's very ambiguous, and I feel like that's what makes it so exciting right now. Also, other things I'm looking to like pursue is just forging more relationships with people and working with totally different people as well. I feel like when I made the point around like the mentorship and like just having those conversations, I learn a lot. I feel like that's why I need to actively carry on doing this, maybe exposing myself, working with different people, like being on hackathons. You work with totally different people and you learn totally different things, and I feel like that is what I need to be doing more of, and hopefully expose myself to different teams and different projects is I feel like going to get the best learnings out of me as a person. And there's not one person here you can meet and not learn something from, you know, like generally as a principle in life, there's always something you can learn off someone here, and there's something I want to actively pursue more. And one thing I would also say is I do love London and I love being co-located. That's where my friends and family are as well, and like I said, for work-life balance it works out a lot better. And also what next is I'm about to move to my own house, and that's going to be a whole totally different experience in itself, like buying a house and maybe being closer to London as well. I feel like I need to like manage my expectations around this as well, because of the I suppose the expectations of like having these certain bills to pay as well as having more responsibilities. I feel like that's actively gonna be in the back of my mind whenever I make the next decision as well. But yeah, I feel I'm definitely enjoying things right now at this company, but I don't know what is in store for the future as well, but it's been awesome. Thank you so much for making it to the end of this video. I hope me being open and honest about my reflections of my first 12 months here at Meta can help you out when you're starting a new job as well. Comment down below how you've been finding things in your role. Give this video a thumbs up and subscribe for future design-related videos. I'll catch you in the next video. Peace out.